Jones and others. When we have clarity on that, then the question is, okay, how do we resource it? And that's what I will say to the American public is not going to be driven by the politics of the moment. It's going to be driven by the fact that A, my most important job is to keep us safe, and Al-Qaeda is still trying to do us harm. But B, every time I sign an order, I'm answerable to the parents of those young men and women who I'm sending over there, and I want to make sure that it's for the right reason.
On that point, about a month before the election, you promised a refocused national security strategy, and you said, quote, "We will kill bin Laden, we will crush Al-Qaeda."
Yeah.
As president, commander-in-chief, are you finding it's harder to find him than you thought it might have been as a candidate?
Oh, I think as a candidate I knew it was going to be hard. I don't doubt the interest and the desire of the previous administration to find him and kill him. But I do think that if we have a overarching strategy that reminds us every day that that's our focus, that we have a better chance of capturing and killing him and certainly keeping Al-Qaeda on the run than if we start drifting into a whole bunch of other missions that really aren't related to what is our essential strategic problem and rationale for being there.
It is a small number, but a growing number of Democrats in the Congress who say they want a timeline. They want a time limit on U.S. troop commitments in Afghanistan.
Right.
You thought that was a good idea when it came to Iraq.
Yeah.
Is it a good idea for Afghanistan?
I think that what we have to do is get the right strategy, and then I think we've got to have some clear benchmarks, matrix of progress. That's part of the reason why I said even after 6 months I wanted us to reevaluate.
What would you say to an American who says you've been president for 8 months? Why are you still looking for a strategy?
Well, no. Keep in mind that we put a strategy in place, clarified our goals, but what the election has shown, as well as changing circumstances in Pakistan, is that this is going to be a very difficult operation, and we've got to make sure that we're constantly refining it to keep our focus on what our primary goals are.
Do you think President Karzai stole the election?
I don't think that I'm going to make comments on the election until after everything's been certified. I think there is no doubt that there were reports of fraud out there that at first glance look pretty serious. They're being investigated. They're going through the normal processes. How much fraud took place and whether that had a substantial effect on the results of the election, I think that is something that we're going to have to wait and see in the next few weeks.
A couple other quick security questions, then I want to bring it back home. You recently had lunch with President Clinton. He went to North Korea to help facilitate the release of those American journalists. What is the most interesting thing he told you about Kim Jong-il?
I think President Clinton's assessment was that he's pretty healthy and in control. And that's important to know because we don't have a lot of interaction with the North Koreans. And President Clinton had a chance to see him close up and have conversations with him. I won't go into any more details than that, but there's no doubt that this is somebody who I think for a while people thought was slipping away. He's reasserted himself. It does appear that he was more concerned about succession when he was sick. Maybe less so now that he's well. But our main focus on North Korea, and actually this is a success story so far, and that is that we have been able to hold together a coalition that includes the Chinese and the Russians to really apply some of the toughest sanctions we've seen, and it's having an impact. And I think that North Korea is saying to itself, we can't just bang our spoon on the table and somehow think that the world's going to react positively. We've got to start behaving responsibly. So hopefully we'll start seeing some progress on that front. 7
former directors of Central Intelligence have sent you a letter saying, please invoke your authority to stop the Attorney General's investigation of the Bush-era interrogation tactics.
Right.
Will you do that?
First of all, I respect all 7 of them, and as importantly or more importantly, I have absolute respect and have reliance upon a robust CIA. And I've said before, I want to look forward, not backwards, on this issue. On the other hand, I've also said nobody's above the law. And I don't want to start getting into the business of squelching investigations that are being conducted. Now, it's not a criminal investigation as yet, my understanding. I trust career prosecutors to be judicious. I've made clear both publicly and privately that I have no interest in witch hunts. But ultimately, the law is the law, and we don't go around sort of picking and choosing how we approach it.
It's a tough business, as you know, but in recent weeks people have raised some pretty serious questions. The big rally in town, signs talking about Afro-socialism, swastikas with your name and your picture on them. "You lie," shouted at you during a nationally televised address, and former President Carter says he sees racism in some of this. Do you?
You know, as I've said in the past, are there people out there who don't like me because of race? I'm sure there are. That's not the overriding issue here. I think there are people who are anti-government. I think there's been a long-standing debate in this country that is usually that much more fierce during times of transition, or when presidents are trying to bring about big changes. I mean, the things that were said about FDR are pretty similar to the things that were said about me, that he was a communist, he was a socialist. Things that were said about Ronald Reagan when he was trying to reverse some of the New Deal programs, were pretty vicious as well. The only thing I just hope is that people, I think we can have a strong disagreement, passionate disagreements about issues, without resorting to name calling. We can maintain civility. We can give other people the benefit of the doubt that they want what's best for this country.
The speaker says it reminds her of the hateful anti-gay language in San Francisco that led to deadly violence. Jim Clyburn, who's the highest-ranking African-American in Congress, says he thinks people are trying to delegitimize you. Do you see it as that worrisome?
You know, I've got to tell you that, as I said before, yelling at politicians is, as Americans, apple pie. I mean, that's in our DNA. I said this in the speech to the joint session, that we have a long tradition of being skeptical of government. I do think that it's important for us, again, to remind ourselves that all of us are Americans who love this country. I think it's important not to exaggerate or provide just rank misinformation about each other. I'm amused. I can't tell you how many foreign leaders who are heads of center-right governments say to me, "I don't understand why people would call you socialist. In my country, you'd be considered a conservative." And the other thing I've got to say is that I think it's important for the media, not to do any media bashing here, to recognize that right now in this 24-hour news cycle, the easiest way to get on CNN or Fox or any of the other stations, MSNBC, is to just say something rude and outrageous. If you're civil and polite and you're sensible and you don't exaggerate the bad things about your opponent, and you might maybe get on one of the Sunday morning shows, but you're not gonna be on the loop. And part of what I'd like to see is all of us reward decency and civility in our political discourse. That doesn't mean you can't be passionate, and that doesn't mean that you can't speak your mind. But I think we can all sort of take a step back here and remind ourselves who we are as a people.
I'm over my time. If I can, I want to ask you one question as a parent, not as a president. I was on a college campus this week and at a lab where they're trying to make an H1N1 vaccine. As a parent with 2 daughters in school, how are you dealing with this? And does the Obama family plan include a vaccine for you?
Well, here's the Obama family plan, is to call up my HHS Secretary, Kathleen Sebelius, and my CDC Director, and just ask them, what's your recommendation? And whatever they tell me to do, I will do. My understanding at this point is that the high-risk populations are going to be first with the vaccine, and that means not only healthcare workers, but particularly children with underlying neurological vulnerabilities. And so we've got to make sure that those vaccines go to them first. I'm assuming, and pregnant women, by the way. After that, I think you're looking at kids, and so Maya and Sasha